you want to go first?
I think we have probably the same answer.
I would be surprised if we don't.
Yeah,
so go for it.
Just street and roads, beautification, and housing. So that's the top three issues that I hear of as a current council member, and I'll let Mr. Colkitt answer his.
And yeah, the only difference I had was I would have put beautification third, but roads, that has been the hottest topic that I've heard from people around town, the housing situation, and from business owners, the beautification, whatever we can do to increase the attractability and bring more people into Kelso.
With that issue of kind of road stuff, how do you think, what's the best path for the city to actually pay for some of those improvements? Because I know those don't come easily.
I mean, my idea with it is just, I guess we do have like our general funds, or road funds, the specific funds for those projects. And I will also advocate as much as I can, if elected, just to find any funds from the state or federal funds that may be used. I know the funding issue is always there, and it will be there for the next 4 years, 40 years, and 4 generations. Anything that we can do to just continue to pound the state and the feds for funds to bring to Kelso, especially for the roads, is most important. In lieu of an inability to gather more funds, if we can't shake the money tree enough, I just hope we can prioritize the road fixes to, most benefit the people that are hurting. Time and time again, I've heard that Hostler Road, the West Vista Way folks that live up there, they're feeling that their neighborhood has been forgotten and missed with their roads. They're worried about emergency service access. They're worried about school buses. I was told that they have to, sometimes drive into the ditch if another car is coming along. And I went out there and drove, and holy moly, yeah, like I hear them. Like that road does need some love. So I know that as a city, it's hard to weigh when, it's a more rural neighborhood to put that in priority. But I do feel it's time to focus on some of the more rural areas of the town. Like I did a little digging on the Daily News archive, and I saw there was an article from 2018 that cited the same issues. I'm like, oh gosh, if this is still happening, I will advocate for that.
Yeah, so my idea, and this is going to be a little bit fringe, the city of Kelso has done a really good job financially. In the last 10 years, we've hired Brian Butterfield as our finance director, and he's really he runs a really lean and mean budget. And so in the last 4 years that I've been on council, he's always budgeted for a deficit, but we've never had a deficit, and so we've always come out in the positive. And so basically, the city of Kelso is running a really high reserve fund at this point. And so in my mind, we can't take care of beautification or fixing our street and roads with as lean of a budget as we're running now. And we have 1.5 full-time equivalents in our street and road department. So my idea would be to spend some of our additional ARPA funds on equipment, but then also staff up our street and road department so we can take care of the general maintenance. And there are not a lot of grants available for non-arterial streets and roads. And so we are really going to be on the hook for our Hostler Roads of the world, or our Chestnuts. I don't know if you guys have driven down Chestnut. Garrett and I were just talking about it last night. It's almost like a teenage jump that if you hit it fast enough, you could catch air. So my idea would be to spend down our general fund, not all the way. Right now we are running about 80% reserve funding, when the AWC recommends 15 to 20%, and most cities run about a 30 to 40%. So my idea would be to spend on our general fund, staff up our street and road department, and I want to be probably that 40 to 50% reserve rate, so we can still feel comfortable as a city. But we also have to know that attractability and we can't grow our city if our roads are in disrepair. So we increase our beautification by beefing up that public works department, and then knowing that the sales tax revenue will increase over the future, and we'll start drawing in more businesses, and then we can make up that differential, if that makes any sense. I think the city of Kelso has kind of lacked that clear vision in the past, and right now our council is kind of struggling to find that vision to grow the city, not 2 or 3 or 4 years from now, but 20 or 30 years from now. So we've been pushing for an ADA accessible park in South Kelso. My vision for Kelso is those types of parks and those types of that type of infrastructure, which is kind of future thinking, but you see it in Vancouver, you see it up in the Nickel Park in Centralia. Those type of parks to replace all of our current parks, but also as far as beautification, it's as simple as cleaning the sidewalks. And I don't know if you've driven over the Allen Street Bridge lately, but it's full of moss and scum. Overall beautification that way, and you can kind of achieve the same results by adding some LED uplighting and making things a little bit more futuristic looking, I guess is probably not the right word, but I don't know if you've driven the Woodburn to the Woodburn outlets, but there's a bridge that extends over I-5 that has LED color changing uplighting. It wouldn't be overly cost prohibitive to add those along the Allen Street Bridge just as a futuristic thinking. And then when we have our tree lighting, our tree across from City Hall, it's purple for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We could literally make the whole Allen Street Bridge that same color in support of that month, or red, white, and blue for 4th of July, or orange and white and whatever different colors for Halloween. So there are little things that we can do in addition to simply cleaning, but I think we start with simply cleaning the streets and painting our curbs and painting our crosswalks.
And then I feel for a grand vision if funding and none of that, there were no constraints with that. In addition, like with the cleaning and the back to basics kind of ideas like that, which are all great, I would love to see more expression of arts. In one point, our city in Kelso, like we're full of different artists. We have so many different groups of like just folks of different culture, different artistic backgrounds. I would love to see more art and murals on just public spaces or even sides of buildings. I'm inspired by what's happening with downtown Longview. It's really cool to see just our culture shown that way. So I'd love to show off what Kelso has to offer on the art side. And then two, for beautification, I believe we have a major lack of tree canopy in Kelso. And if funds weren't an issue, like I would love to see more street trees, not only for the beautification aspect of it, but to make walking more pleasurable for folks who aren't driving cars. Just to have like an Allen Street full of trees from I-5 to the bridge. I know that would be a major budget thing, but if we had an endless blank check to play with, I'd love to add more trees around the city and more art.
Got a blank check.
I know. You guys got a blank check?
Yeah, but it's gonna bounce when you try to cash.
Oh, we'll spend quick. Yeah. Oh yeah. 2 thumbs up.
It kind of speaks for itself. If we can generate more revenue with grant funding by investing $60,000, $70,000 for a executive director, then and make that up on the back end tenfold, I think it's kind of a wise decision. It's trying to get buy-in from other members of council and the community that, hey, this initial $70,000 investment is going to be worth its weight to beautify our downtown area.
And I agree. I'm really excited about the Main Street program and Kelso pursuing it. And with that initial investment pays off. And nothing really comes for free. And I know that investment would pay off not only helping our city develop a stronger sense of identity, showing off what we have to offer, but the benefit that it would bring to our local businesses, for our shoppers and spenders who live here already, but to also just amp up another spot in Southwest Washington on the I-5 corridor. Folks, like it's just been really cool to see the growth in Castle Rock, in Kalama, seeing Main Street in Vancouver and the waterfront Vancouver. There's more and more people who are seeing Southwest Washington. I feel like the attention in the Northwest will be shifting from Seattle and from Portland and more towards Vancouver. And with that, if we can have a rockin' downtown Main Street with, beautiful flowers, shops, people walking around where there's just a sense of vibrancy, that's only going to boost our other local businesses. And a big side effect of having that Main Street, I think that could attract long-term employees. It came up at a meeting last night that folks were talking, hey, we're having a problem in our area keeping long-term professionals living here. And I think, if folks had the option of moving to somewhere like Vancouver, Portland, Seattle, where there's, thriving community and there's more to do, maybe we could get them to Kelso and give them more like sense of civic pride and more to do.
Is there a reason you think the Main Street program specifically is a good option for Kelso? Because I know you mentioned Kelso about they were able to do it without going through Main Street.
I think it's a good idea to try the Main Street. Just the access that it could bring with those state funds from Washington. And I know I asked some folks who live in Castle Rock, they're like, a lot of what's happening in Castle Rock, the American Blooms program, which is awesome, but there's a lot of folks, because it's a small, tight-knit community, that are donating their time and their resources to boost up Castle Rock. I think Kelso, we do have a great sense of volunteership and community service, but if those funds are out there in the state and they're going to other communities, if there's other Main Street programs that are getting into that, we should have that in Kelso. We shouldn't be leaving that on the table.
Yeah, and Kelso's kind of a blank slate. Right now, we don't have a thriving downtown business community. We have a couple shops here and there, and so we really get the ability to start fresh. So you've heard Councilmember Hill talk about the Arts for Kids and the arts districting, and how I view it, and from my research, the Main Street designation is really kind of the umbrella to move forward with other proposals like that, or to help the communities in bloom program thrive. So moving forward with the Main Street designation, obviously it's not the be-all end-all. We have to continue moving forward with the KBCA and the communities in bloom, but that helps fund and drive the identity of our downtown longer term, so we can focus on some of those other arts programs and other programs for our downtown. Yeah, so there's a little bit of a backstory. So my history, my bachelor's degree is in criminal law and justice, and then when I was in college, I actually interned with the Park Creek Juvenile Rehabilitation Facility, which is a minimum security, medium security facility for incarcerated youth, and then I transferred over to the Green Hill Boys School, where I was in the integrative gang unit, which is a high maximum security juvenile prison. From there, I went to State of Washington Department of Corrections, where I had a broad range of caseloads, including a sex offender caseload. Part of my job duties at the Washington State Department of Corrections as parole and probation officer was to do address checks and approve interstate transfer requests for sex offenders. And I haven't been able to find the specific code in Clark County, but I know there was prohibitions on sex offenders living under one roof or living in a specific area. I don't know if they approached it through zoning or code, but when I was the parole and probation officer, the RCWs in the state of Washington, it's they call it the County of Origin RCW. So when you have to release from prison to the county that you committed your first felony. Yes. The exceptions are if there's no housing, then you have to transfer to the next adjacent county from prison. And so we would have to approve transfers of registered sex offenders to Cowlitz County, whose county of origin was actually Clark County. And so my proposal to limit the number of sex offenders was less about taking care of our own sex offenders, and it was more about importing more into our community from outside of our area. And I believe that's part of the reason why we have a higher per capita number of sex offenders than any other community or any other county in the state of Washington. And so my idea was more about transferring sex offenders in. And I don't know if you followed that, but we ended up passing that that zoning ordinance, and our city attorney was looking at it. So we had council concurrence, and then we had a new election where the makeup of council shifted, and then we were trying to extend the emergency moratorium again, so our city attorney could continue the review process, and council opted to vote that down. So it is not currently moving forward. I would like to readdress it at a later date because I believe we have more information on the number of sex offenders that are here from out of the area. But I plan on readdressing it, if we can get some more council concurrence.
I mean, it's unfortunate if we're, kind of the backup plan for Clark County. So if the city can review and, readdress, as Keenan mentioned, what the city can do to just like contain zoning or do that just as an additional precaution. But ultimately, as a new candidate, I'm not fully versed in that, so I don't want to, speak out of pocket. But I do know and trust that, with the issue of sex offenders, I hear families and people are always concerned. But I am thankful that our law enforcement is so strong, so responsive, that if there are any concerns, we live in a community with an awesome police chief and awesome staff to address those concerns. But I would be interested to see what the city attorney and future council members and current council members would think about that, and collaborate with our city professionals as well, just to make sure that Cowlitz County and Kelso specifically are doing everything we can to protect our residents, but also with respect that folks who are have been incarcerated or are trying to rehabilitate, that they do need a place. But I think it is just finding that balancing act of protecting citizens and their concerns, as well as allowing people a place to rehabilitate. So unfortunately, there's no safe space for, no perfect spot for that to happen. So if it does have to be us, then, hey, we have a great police department and we have a great sense of communication in our neighborhoods. I mean, I hope that the county can keep that going. I know that tonight at the city council, they're going to read a letter written by the mayor of Longview that's going to come up tonight and be sent to the county commissioners, asking that that tax remains, if not increases. I mean, drug court is vital. I know we wish that we didn't have to deal with the drug problem, but it's rampant. It's continuing to grow. And I think in the foreseeable future, that's going to be like the biggest thing that we need to take care of. The drug court in Cowlitz County is a good resource. I know not every drug user will be rehabilitated, but case in case again, there are folks who have gone through drug court, they've received treatment, and they have moved on past that. I've met people in my career path who have gone through like years and years and years of drug abuse, and then going through drug court, getting rehabilitated, finding connections for help, change their life. And I know it's always hard for us to spend money, and people don't want to spend money and just think that drug users should be locked up. But I believe that that sales tax to fund drug court is way more cost effective than letting people remain on the streets or just going into the system for a citation or whatever, and then going right back on the streets to do it. Like, treatment and rehabilitation is, I think, important. Some people may just need the punitive, jail time or whatever, but I do believe in treatment, and I hope that sales tax and the county supports it.
I'm trying to find the logic of canceling a mental health tax in the middle of a mental health and drug crisis. It doesn't seem very wise to me, and I think there's a lot of unintended consequences that come with it. As Mr. Colkitt said, the drug court is a fantastic program. I used to put clients in to drug court because we knew that they were going to be held accountable. So I agree with him that it would be really unwise and silly to cancel a drug court, and I am happy to sit down at any county commissioners meeting and talk to them and tell them how stupid it would be. As most of you guys know, I have no problem being blunt or sitting in front of people telling them that I believe that they're probably incorrect in the decision. So.
Yeah. Again.
So I kind of tell everybody, just because things seem heightened in our meeting, that's less than 1% of what we do. Just because we bicker and we fight and we argue, that doesn't mean we won't call each other the next day and talk about another policy procedure that could better Kelso. So while you guys are seeing kind of the in your face drama, it's really not like that long term. I do believe we have a communication issue in the city, and that's something that we need to improve. And that's not necessarily amongst council member to council member, although that does exist, but it's also city staff to council and council amongst ourselves. So, you're seeing less than 1% of what we do, and so it's really not our dramatic political infighting. Every time I think we have an issue, Clam our Longview says, "Hold my beer, watch what we can do." But we generally, as a council, all get along, and I don't know if you've noticed, but we've generally been passing things 6-1 or 7-0. Occasionally, we have a flare up of some drama, but in my opinion, it's kind of an unreasonable expectation to think that 7 people with differences of opinions are going to get along at all times. And yeah, we could probably approach some of that things, myself included, a little more tactfully, but we're all human, we're all real people, and occasionally flare-ups are going to happen when there's 7 people that disagree on multiple items.
I will say, it's really convenient. It's all cleared up during an election year, right? Yeah. I do understand, in the democratic process and engagement, that passion can come out. I hear that, it can interpersonal between the city council and staff. There is a communication issue, but ultimately, that it is good that even though the folks disagree, they can come together and all try to move the city forward. I hear that, and people refer to politics sometimes as a blood sport, but I know my communication style of being very calm and tranquil. Spending so many years working in finance as a bank teller, I had people coming in yelling at me, threatening my life and all this, and I just realized, I can stay calm. I'm going to make this person my friend, and their anger is just a part of communication. And sometimes we lose focus when we are angry, and it's just a side effect of something that's going on. So I do hear part of it with council stuff, that there is some anger, disagreement, but ultimately I think if we could have a more calm and tranquil style on a council, that will make for better communication overall.
As Mr. Colkitt said, it's kind of convenient that it's happening during election season. I don't disagree with him. Mr. Hill and I have 2 different dynamic personalities. We were again. That doesn't mean he's not going to text me the next day just because we flare up and at a meeting. That doesn't mean he's not going to text me and talk about other issues to better Kelso. What I can say is, Mr. Hill has a habit of trying to bully his way into his policy procedures and his ideas. And in that bullying, if he uses vulgarities like he did in that case, I have no problem filing a formal complaint about it. We are community leaders. We should be those community leaders. We should be the faces of the city. We should set that example for school children. And if you tell somebody you should pull your head out of your behind, that's not appropriate in any professional setting, including the city. So the expectation should be the same for us as any Fortune 500 company down to small business. And setting that precedent for the community is really important. We should call bullies as we see it. We should call bullying as it is. And that's really what happened in that situation. Is he and I disagreed on a specific topic. and he chose inappropriate verbiage, and he was reprimanded for that, as the process should happen.
Are you endorsing Mr. Hill's opponent?
Am I endorsing him? I've known him for a long time.
Yes. So where are you landing? It's the
I am.
suddenly everyone's getting along.
I am endorsing So I am endorsing myself and only myself. But that doesn't mean that I won't lend a hand to Mr. Bunn. I think he's got new, fresh ideas that are a different skill set than Mr. Hill. But I don't know if that's technically officially an endorsement, because Mr. Hill and I, we work well together now. He and I text each other, we call each other, we have common agreements and ways to better the city. I would be happy to work with either of them moving forward, if that makes sense. So it's not an official endorsement. It's just I've known Mr. Bunn since I was in grade school, and he's a political newcomer and asks for advice. Like a politician, right? Like I promised I would never be.
Keenan and I
Yeah, we went to school
together.
together.
We went to school together. I mean, we weren't close, and I'm not saying that like we had anything against each other, but I feel like Kelso was just such a big school that our paths didn't really cross. My relationships with the current counselors, I've talked to them, I've met them since wanting to run and being more interested in our local politics, and I think we have a solid group on the council. I've got some good advice, and it's great to see their dedication to the city. They have great volunteership records, they are passionate, and they have some great ideas. I don't really have any major leanings towards anyone or any detractment from anyone on council right now. I just want to make sure Kelso has a wide range of perspective, wide range of experience, and I think that's what's most important.
The answer is no, there would not be a similar situation. My full-time role right now is I'm a commercial insurance agent for large and medium-sized business. We write municipalities, we write large corporations, and overwhelmingly the advice that I receive in my full-time role, which I was elected to I was elected because my opinion and my experiences full-time matter to the city. And to this day, there has still not been a single general liability claim for an individual not wearing a mask and spreading COVID. So at that time, the city of Kelso did not have a Zoom option for our meetings. You could meet in person, or you could stay home and watch the KLTV option later. There was a agenda item that I warned not only our police chief, but our city manager and Mayor Malone at the time that there was going to be issues. They did not heed my warning. They moved forward with the meeting without a Zoom option. And sure enough, right before the meeting, a gentleman walked in without a mask on. And in my full-time employment, the advice given by insurance carriers across the board is you offer every means to wear a mask, you offer hand sanitizer, you post signage, but do not get into a knockdown, drag-out fight over wearing a mask, because it creates larger liability risks to the business, or in this case, the city, than it would be to allow him to sit crisscross applesauce in the front row without a mask on. Again, there to this day has not been a single general liability claim from COVID being transferred from one person to another person from not wearing a mask. So in that case, the best course of action was that we walk out of that meeting and reconvene at a location that is permissible for people to not wear masks, as we did. The next week, we sat at Tam O'Shanter Park. We had our meeting until a Zoom option was open, and all problems were solved.
And just to be clear, what was the agenda item?
It was a mask proclamation, or a COVID, anti-COVID proclamation, something along those lines. I don't remember which one it was, but
Personally, no issue. A few notes that I have on that. It's unfortunate that, there was that situation, but I believe that it was a financial misstep for the city to, make those adjustments to the council. Like when the council shifted to having the meetings in TAMO to accommodate a small minority of people, that cost the city thousands. I went and tried to look back at budget items to see what the exact quote was for that, but that was a financial misstep for the city. And I hear people and I understand, and I wish that the Zoom link would have been an option for people. But, that was a cost for the city for a minority group of folks who did not want to just step in line. Where I know that the city staff and the chief of police, they were just following, as a city does, the state. I know that the city has some play of what they can do, but ultimately at that time, like the state had their mandates. And I think a byproduct of all that is unfortunate for the city because it became such a stink with the proclamation that was generally, pursued and just useless. Like our city gained a bunch of negative press and negative buzz over that. Portland news stations, Seattle news stations, the Seattle Time, and I believe that just was really unfortunate. And over the years, I worked in an office and had to wear a mask. I know people didn't like it, but ultimately, I think there was more people who were silent and quiet and just stepped in line and did it for the greater good rather than causing a stink about it. And I hope to advocate for those people. I know nobody wants to speak up about it because it's really unpopular and, there's a loud vocal minority of people who want to duke it out over masks. But ultimately, like, gosh, like that was I feel like a demark on our city and just the costs. And still, I have people who are like, "Oh, Kelso," like talking about where I live when they call for mortgage applications. They're like, "Oh, that place, the mask place," and then have that weird conversation like, "Can we just move on from this, please?" So yeah, in short, like I think that could have been better. I know times were different, and I had the benefit of being outside of the council at that time, but I do think it was a misstep for the city of Kelso.
And I don't disagree with my opponent on that. I think the crux of the issue is what creates more liability for the city. A knockdown, drag-out fight with a person with one person refusing to wear a mask. I think it's important to note that all members of council were wearing masks, and everybody else in the room was wearing a mask. So had we allowed the person to sit there crisscross applesauce and stomp his feet, we would have never had the red dot on the city. I think the enforcement action of Kelso Police, which I support 100%, and they're a fantastic police agency. I would put them up against every other police agency in the state of Washington as far as quality. But do I believe the enforcement of surrounding a person with 6 uniformed officers at a meeting created more drama for the city? Yeah, I do. And yes, they were just following directions from the state. But they have to look at the total, the issues as a totality instead of just what's black and white on the piece of paper. Again, had they gone hands-on and created an injury to this person, which happens pretty frequently in an arrest, we would likely have a larger financial issue than stepping out and reconvening when everybody who we're, as most people say, we're elected to represent everybody. Mask people, not mask people. We gave them that opportunity by moving the meeting to the park.
Oh man, I feel like I'm getting my Sim City childhood dreams of just having unlimited budget and mall vitalization.
Shift FUND, baby.
Yeah.
But golly, I mean, we do have those anchor stores that are still there. But for the mall portion, if we had unlimited funds, unlimited budget, there was no downside of eminent domain on a privately owned, privately ran space. Gosh, again, like I would love to see that be almost like a west side of I-5 portion of like Tam O'Shanter. Like I just see it as a wide open green space, a bicycle park, an additional skate park, other recreational opportunities. I think we could have like some, like maybe even like a creek pollinator meadows, just this lovely ultimate space for people to go relax, get some tranquility, and connect it all with, bike lanes if possible, off-street trails, just to let people get out and enjoy the outdoors. That would be my dream.
Holy cow, something we disagree on.
All right, cool.
Okay.
Let's hear you.
So the city has no bearing over private industry, but what we can do as a city is promote some growth and change by zoning. So we're working on a multifamily tax exemption credit right now, and most of the time those multifamily tax exemption credits, so that's basically a property tax relief for multifamily developers for a 7 to 8 year period, depending on how we put it in our ordinance. Most of the times those don't have the net impact on duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes, but what they do have a net impact on are large multifamily developments. So if we rezoned the mall and created a kind of a market commons where we didn't create it. We created the ability for the developer or the business owner to save property tax revenue by building up instead of so many parking spaces, so many unused parking spaces, so many shops that aren't generating a net benefit to the city, then I believe that's kind of our role as a council to get creative with our zoning. And I believe that's kind of why the city of Kelso is in the position that we are, is that we hadn't had that vision 20 or 30 years ago for what we saw the city of Kelso becoming. So if we pass good policy and change our zoning to allow for that multifamily development, that is what I would like to see. I frequently visit Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and there's a development called the Market Commons, which is basically it's a privately owned downtown where the private developer punched a street straight down the middle, and there's mom and pop shops on either side, and there's multifamily housing up to 4 stories above it. So we as a city don't want to demolish private industry because sales tax revenue is the biggest driving force of our budget. So we can't fix our street and roads if we don't grow our sales tax revenue in the city. So continuing to promote that business growth and development with zoning and kind of changing our housing density, and also moving forward with good programs like multifamily tax exemption programs in the city could help promote and change that mall area into a shopping district, but also some housing.
Are we talking market rate, or would you want to find incentives to bring affordable housing, more affordable housing to the city?
So we are working on 2 low-income housing projects right now in the city of Kelso. It's about 72 units. I'm of the opinion that the real estate market corrects itself. So I'm less focused on building or focusing on low-income housing, and more focused on putting more doors in the city of Kelso. The more doors that are built, and for example, you have a new, I know it's outside of the city, but in Lexington, you have an apartment complex that's being built. That's going to draw attraction from people that can afford to live in those higher end apartments to move from Summerwinds. Summerwinds is going to draw people to move from Allen Street. Allen Street's going to become vacant, and their rent and lease rates, in theory, should fall a little bit. So that mobility in housing, I don't care what housing is built, low income to high dollar, as long as we're getting doors built.
Do you have any thoughts on the proposed low housing, since we've kind of talked on that one?
I'm about to get schooled by a mortgage lender on this.
Think about this project.
So I think the projects that we do have, like Catlin and Maine, the Blue Thistle project that's going fantastic. Right now, I think it's an all hands on deck approach that's necessary for housing. So the partnership with CAP to help with the Catlin and Maine project, the Kelso Housing Authority, I think that's one leg on the stool of housing. Ultimately the free market rate will decide what happens. But right now, and for the foreseeable future, it looks like mortgage rates are going to be high. Fannie Mae, the Mortgage Bankers Association, and I can't remember, I think it was a different mortgage news outlet, they did a survey in expectation with their economists and all that, and it looks like mortgage rates are going to be probably around 6% projected until the fourth quarter of next year. So housing, if that's like our big thing right now, like the free market right now, builders are kind of not hot to trot right now. People are not moving unless it's right now for a new job or anything else. So if we can do what we can to help alleviate the pressure on the low income folks, while then also, being ready and being open to building with, the idea of upzoning or building more multifamily homes to allow for just a bigger supply. I think that's another leg of the stool. And then ultimately just like let the free market be the free market once those rates start to drop and as the appetite for builders go in correlation with like the statewide push for housing and making that more better. I think that it takes all, free market and the, public help to make sure that we have enough housing. So I do support what's going on. I think Kelso is a great spot for it. And especially CAP, I think, will be a benefit. And the added plus too of having the library in that housing project and saving thousands of dollars per month on rent from the mall. I think that's great. So I don't know. I'm inspired for the next 4 years of what housing will look like. I know right now it's kind of doomy and gloomy in the housing market, but that will break. And I mean, gosh, with housing, like we have such an amazing area for business. If we can just continue to beautify, increase our supply, and do what we can to be housing forward, people will come. They will continue to come, and be it not in the center of Kelso or within the city limits, Lexington, Longview, and the county at large. And it's only going to make our city stronger.